On the air with us right now is on the line with us, commentator, author, and writer and political consultant Don Fetter joining us. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Mark.
Happy New Year to you.
Well, thank you. Happy New Year to you, Mark.
Appreciate you being able to join us this morning. I imagine you had a chance to check out the Iowa caucuses last night. Were you surprised at all at how well Mike Huckabee did?
No, the polls have been predicting that Huckabee would take the Republican caucuses. I'm not sure how much it means, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
As you probably know, the person who wins the New Hampshire caucuses, either for the Republican or the Democratic Party, generally doesn't go on to win their party's nomination. You may recall in 1980, Ronald Reagan lost the Iowa caucuses to George Bush Sr., went on to win New Hampshire, win his party's nomination, and, of course, win the presidency. Bill Clinton, I believe, lost Iowa in 1992, but followed the same scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clinton may have lost New Hampshire, too, come in second in New Hampshire, and went on to win the Democratic nomination and the White House. So I'm not sure how much Iowa really means.
So it can be misleading then. We shouldn't take too much.
Very misleading. But then the interesting question comes up. If Iowa doesn't mean that much, why do so many candidates put so much effort into Iowa?
And at the same time, if they put so much into it and they have so much riding on the results, then if they don't do well, it's almost like they're admitting that, well, you know, maybe my campaign doesn't have a lot of validity or credibility.
Yes, except you may have noticed that both Hillary Clinton and Mitt Romney. Hillary did much worse, by the way, than Romney. She didn't come in second. She came in third, not a distant third. Edwards beat her by 1 percentage point,
right.
But she came in third. And Romney, who came in second, both said, well, this is round one, which is generally what the people who lose in Iowa say. This is round one, on to round two. Everybody is now in New Hampshire, which is next door to Massachusetts, the state I live in. It could end up being a confusing year in more ways than one.
Well, Mitt Romney said it's a 50-inning baseball game, and this was just the first inning. See, that's how.
And Romney has the money to stay in it right up to the end.
He does. He does have the money to stay in it, and I understand that some of the other Republican candidates are running short on cash. In fact, one of the things I heard about Rudy Giuliani, and one of the reasons why he isn't really contesting some of these early primaries is number one, he doesn't have a lot of appeal in those places, but he doesn't have much money left. That's what I'm hearing. Have you heard the same?
I hadn't heard that. I think he was wise not to contest Iowa. He wasn't going to do well in Iowa for the same reason that Mike Huckabee won the Iowa caucuses, and that is that Iowa is a social conservative state. It has a large evangelical vote, and Giuliani knew there was no way he could appeal to those people. New Hampshire is very different. New Hampshire is a conservative state. It tends to be fiscally conservative, socially liberal. So people like Giuliani and McCain are going to have more appeal in New Hampshire than they would in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Though, the one thing I was struck by in looking at the Republican candidates particularly is I wonder if within the entire pack there is a national candidate. I mean, I think we have some pretty good regional candidates. Like Romney should do pretty well in New Hampshire because of the fact that folks there know him. He's right next door from Massachusetts, got a lot of name recognition there. Ron Paul could do well because of his libertarian leanings, and New Hampshire's live free or die type of state. And but then
I think Ron will do particularly well if there are a lot of neo-Nazis voting in the New Hampshire primary.
Well,
I don't view it that way, Mark, and forgive me for interrupting
you.
I think all of them are national candidates.
Really?
I mean, with the exception of people like Duncan Hunter and Ron Paul. I mean, they're not going anywhere, despite the fact that Ron Paul managed to get 10% in Iowa. That gives you some idea of how quirky Iowa is. None of these, people like Duncan Hunter, Ron Paul, they're going absolutely nowhere. And they're not even going nowhere fast. They're going nowhere slowly, although they might reach oblivion quickly. They're all national candidates. The problem is that most of these candidates, if they're nominated, are going to end up splitting the Republican base. Republicans have always won when they keep their base intact. By their base, I mean economic conservatives, social conservatives, defense foreign policy conservatives. Now, most of the candidates for the Republican nomination, Mark, can only appeal to one or two of those three segments of the Republican base, not all three. For instance, Giuliani loses the social conservatives, clearly. Huckabee loses the economic conservatives, and I think loses the defense foreign policy conservatives as well. Ron Paul obviously will lose the defense foreign policy conservatives, and he'll lose some of the social conservatives, too, when they find out that he's in favor of legalizing hard drugs and prostitution. The candidates who can best appeal to the Republican base, all of the Republican base, are Fred Thompson and Mitt Romney.
Yeah, and I would, but here's the thing: is outside of Romney and outside of Paul, who has raised a lot of money, the other candidates, it's almost like the people who would make big contributions and help raise a lot of money are kind of standing back and waiting to see who in the Republican field is going to emerge as the leader before they make their commitment. You know, you see Huckabee finishing really strong in Iowa, but not translating to a lot of money for him so far. And then I've heard about, Giuliani not having a lot of cash, and John McCain, the same thing, and Fred Thompson. It's almost like the people that would raise money and really get your campaign jump-started are standing back and waiting to see who's going to be the head and shoulders leader before they make a commitment. And, of course, like you said, Romney has got his own personal fortune, so he can afford to spend whatever he needs to spend to stay up in front, top of mind awareness with the voters in whatever primary he's competing in. But, I wonder about the long-term viability of, say, Thompson or McCain or even Rudy Giuliani if they can't start getting some money into their campaigns, and the same with Mike Huckabee.
That's a valid assessment. Not only are there a lot of money people and party movers and shakers standing on the sideline. There are a lot of voters on the sideline.
Yeah.
A lot of Republican voters in New Hampshire, for instance, in the Super Tuesday states, haven't made up their minds. And the one advantage that Iowa seems to give people is visibility and credibility.
Yeah.
Back in 1980, Bush 41, the senior George Bush, referred to it as the Big Mo. Momentum. He thought Iowa was going to give him momentum, and he would then sweep into New Hampshire, beat Ronald Reagan in New Hampshire, go on to win the nomination. Of course, that didn't happen. There are some advantages to Iowa, clearly, but you're right. There are a lot of big donors who are waiting to see who emerges as the clear front runner. There are a lot of Republican voters who haven't made up their mind. In fact, going into the caucuses last night, according to the opinion surveys, a lot of people going to the Iowa caucuses decided at the last minute who they were going to vote for.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Thompson's real problem, by the way, isn't lack of funding, although certainly he's not as well-heeled as some of the other Republican candidates. Thompson's big problem, and frankly, I think Thompson is probably the best Republican candidate, based not on just what he's saying today, but based on his record. Thompson's problem is people look at him and say, this guy doesn't want to be president.
He doesn't look motivated. He
not only does he not look motivated, Mark, he isn't motivated.
He reminds me of Bush 41 in the 92 election. Looking at his watch, that kind of, how much longer do I have to be here?
Oh, in the second debate, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Why should I even bother? Why do I have to be here debating this schmuck?
Yeah.
I should be preparing my inaugural address. Yeah. That's.
Can I get a little applause? Right?
Yeah. No. Thompson is great on the issues. He had a good record. All of the conservative interest groups that I'm in touch with in Washington, the tax reform people, the immigration reform people, defense foreign policy, abortion, They all say that